Hello, and thank you for clicking on this video. Before the video starts, I need you to do two things to help this channel grow. One is subscribe down below, and the second is like this video and share it with anybody that you want to spread MMA news to, whether it's family, friends, anybody. I always appreciate your support. And now let's get to the video. November 12th, 1993 is where UFC held its first event. Fast forward to April 13th, 2024, UFC 300 is upon us. UFC 300 will be a night that will forever live within the mixed martial arts world. It celebrates every fighter that has ever stepped inside of that UFC cage. Will you be there to witness history? Hello everybody, my name is Tyler Russo and this is the KO Podcast, episode number 51. This episode is a very special episode, as you heard in the opening little intro that I did. It is UFC 300, finally, it has come. This card is stacked top to bottom. I'm going to be talking about every single fight on that card, so strap in. This is going to be a packed episode. And also, let's not forget, on Friday of this week, right before UFC 300, we do have PFL 2. That is the second regular season card of the PFL. So after I review the UFC card and after I talk about UFC 300, we will be discussing some of these fights on this PFL card. So ring that bell. Alright, let's get to this past weekend's card. UFC Fight Night, Allen vs. Curtis 2. I'm just going to skim over this card, pick out some of the highlights. Starting off, we had a bantamweight bout. We had Dan Argueta taking on Gene Masamoto. I believe that's how you say his name. And Masamoto gets the last second submission with 4 minutes and 59 seconds left in the second round. Argueta taps. I think he went out because he did not know what happened when the ref stopped the fight. He was about to re-engage on the ground, but the ref luckily told him the fight was over. I think Argueta went out and he must have tapped when he was going out or something, but crazy submission. A tap literally at the last second. We had a women's bantamweight bout. We had Norma Dumont taking on Germaine de Randamie, the former UFC featherweight champion, the first ever UFC featherweight champion. Although that division is probably dead now, but she still deserves that credit for winning a championship. She loses to Norma Dumont by decision. Norma Dumont, really good fight by her. She is always a tough customer when it comes to her fights. She's 11-2. So her standing in the women's bantamweight division is probably going to stay relatively the same because Germaine de Randamie was not ranked coming into this fight. Now, let's get to the main card. Kicking it off, we had Charlie Campbell getting the decision victory over Trevor Peek. It was a hell of a fight, though. Trevor Peek did receive a contract extension, even though he lost. So congrats on Trevor Peek for getting a new deal by the UFC. Moving on, we had a lightweight bout. We had Ignacio Bahamondes. He gets a head kick KO in the first round over Gigagos. I believe that's how you say his name. And again, Bahamondes, very impressive finish. This guy has all the skill in the world, and he is still only, I believe he's only 25, and he's 26 years old, so he's still got some room to grow. Now, let's keep moving up on the card. Let's get to the co-main event. It was a featherweight bout. We had Damian Jackson taking on Alexander Hernandez, and Damian Jackson gets the decision victory. Now, let's move on to the main event of this card. We had Brandon Allen taking on Chris Curtis. Now, these two did fight some time ago, and Chris Curtis got the TKO victory over Brendan Allen. Let me tell you, this fight was an all-out war. Definitely a top contender for fight of the year. Brandon Allen squeaks out a decision victory. Again, credit to both of these guys, especially Chris Curtis, who came in on short notice. and it seemed like he really did injure his hamstring or something in his knee/leg area. He was grabbing it really bad when the fight ended. I hope Chris Curtis makes a speedy recovery, and he is a badass. He is literally a guy that will fight you anywhere at any time. He was taking time off when he got the call to jump in on this main event. He took the opportunity, so hopefully Chris Curtis can recover from whatever injury he sustained. But Brandon Allen, he is definitely in title talk contention now in that middleweight class. He's got good stand-up and a really good submission game. So excited to see what Brandon Allen can do next. Oh, baby, we have arrived at UFC 300. This card is stacked from top to bottom. The whole early prelim and prelim card will be on ESPN, the main ESPN. So lock in and watch some of these great matchups. Let's get into it. We have a bantamweight bout kicking it off. We got two former champions. We got the former flyweight king, Davison Figueiredo. He is taking on former bantamweight king, Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt is welcoming Figueiredo to the 135 division. This fight should be really competitive, and Cody Garbrandt, he's got that power in his hands that seems to have never left him so far in his career. And we also got Figueiredo, who seems to be the better overall MMA fighter, but we will see when these two clash. Moving on, we have a lightweight bout. We got Jim frickin' Miller taking on Bobby Green. These are two OGs of the UFC. Jim Miller is in the UFC record book for so many things, and Bobby Green, obviously his last fight was not good, did not go his way. Referee should be ashamed of himself. That was a horrible stoppage. Bobby Green took way too much unnecessary damage. So that's one of the factors coming into this fight for Green. How much has he recovered really from that brutal stoppage? It should have been stopped way sooner. And Jim Miller's, I believe, 5-1 in his last 6. He hasn't fought the strongest competition if you go and look at the guys that he's faced, but Jim Miller is still a UFC badass. Moving on, we have a women's strawweight bout. We got the former champion Jessica Andrade taking on Marina Rodriguez. Of course, we know Jessica Andrade has power in her hands, but recently she's been picking up a lot of losses. She did win her last fight, and that was against Mackenzie Dern, who decided to stand with Andrade. I'm not really sure why she did that. Andrade picked her apart and got that TKO victory. So I'm excited to see if Andrade still has that killer instinct in her. Marina Rodriguez is a very good boxing MMA fighter. She's coming off of a TKO against Michelle Waterson Gomez, and that got her performance of the night. Very excited to see these two women clash. We got a lightweight bout. We got Jalen Turner taking on Rakato Morikano. These guys are all action fighters. Jalen Turner is insanely tall for the lightweight class. He is 6'2" with a 77-inch reach. And you look at Morikano, who is 5'9" with 72-inch reach. That may play a factor in this fight. Jalen Turner also has a really good submission game. Morikano is just a dog, and he will not get put away easily. So it's going to take a lot of violence for Morikano to be out of the fight. So excited to see that scrap. Moving on, we got a featherweight bout. We got Sadiq Youssef taking on Diego Lopez. Diego Lopez has really become a very popular fighter in the UFC after he had a very impressive short notice UFC debut against Mosar Alivov, and a lot of people became a fan of him after. He's now got a submission victory and a TKO victory, so now he's getting a huge opportunity on UFC 300. Moving on, we got a bantamweight bout. We got the former bantamweight champion Holly Holm. She takes on a debuting Kayla Harrison. This has been a very hyped up signing by the UFC. Obviously, Kayla Harrison is a 2-time Olympic judo gold medalist for the United States, and she dominated in PFL. She's 16-1, The big knock on her career so far has been she has not faced top-notch competition. So here she is, right off the bat, she's going against a former bantamweight champion. I'm not really sure how this fight's going to go at this moment as I'm sitting here because I'm very worried about Kayla Harrison's weight cut to 135. She's fought in 155 and 145, so I'm really not going to have a full scope of information. I'm going to really look at the fight week, and if Kayla Harrison makes weight and looks good, I think I'm going to lean a little bit more towards Harrison. She's got that insane judo game. She's such a strong woman. Now, will that weight cut take some of her strength away? Most likely it will. So Holly Holm, obviously a Hall of Famer in the Boxing Hall of Fame, a boxing champion, and she's got really good kicks. So this is a very interesting fight. Holly Holm may use her boxing a little bit more to negate any takedown opportunities, because when you start throwing those kicks, obviously your legs can become entangled with someone trying to get a takedown on you. Moving on, we got a featherweight bout. We got Calvin Kattar, Boston's own. He's taking on former bantamweight king Aljamain Sterling. Very excited for this matchup. Aljamain Sterling not cutting to 135. That's really exciting. I'm excited to see what he looks like, without that 135 weight cut. I think Aljamain Sterling can really make a run at this title if he can get a good opening fight, and if he can win against Kattar, he's right in that title contention for featherweight. So this is really interesting that he's gonna put himself in 145. I think it's a really good decision by him. He's obviously getting a little older. He's 34 years old, and Sterling was one of the better bantamweight champs in recent memory. Now, this is not the main event of the whole card. This is the main event of the prelim portion. We got a light heavyweight bout. We got the former light heavyweight champion Yuri Prochazka. He takes on Alexander Rakic. Very excited to see Rakic. He's had a lot of injury problems in his last fight against Jan Blachowicz. He got hurt. He went to, I believe it was a kick or something, and he injures his knee in the third round. That was in May 14th of 2022. So now he is back, fully recovered, hopefully, and I hope he is really healthy, because that's kind of been that's the problem that he's really ran into. He's had a lot of injuries. He hasn't been able to stay on a consistent fight schedule, and Yuri Prochazka is an insane fighter to watch. I mean, he's such a flow state fighter. Sometimes it works against him. He leaves his chin wide open. He's got his hands floating on the sides of his body. As I said, he's got that flow state karate influence, and he's just an insane guy to watch because he's in his flow state, but he's a 6'2" guy, so it's really intimidating to see him bounce around the cage. Obviously, Prochazka lost his last fight to Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira is in the main event, so if Prochazka wins, he's right back in that light heavyweight title contention. Now, we move to the main card. Kicking it off, we have a middleweight bout. These two guys are the outliers on this card. They're not former champions, and they're not ranked in the middleweight class. Let's get to it. Bo Nickel, the two-time national championship in collegiate wrestling at Penn State. He's 5-0. He takes on Cody Brundage, and Cody Brundage, he can make out really good in this card. If he can beat Bo Nickel and steal that spotlight, Cody Brundage would significantly get a lot more fans. Cody Brundage is a hard-nosed fighter. He's got good grappling. He's pretty good all around. He's had some ground and pound KOs, I believe. But Bo Nickel, a crazy wrestling guy. He showed that he's had power in his hands. So I'm excited for him to prove himself on the biggest stage of his career. Now, we move to the lightweight division. We have the former lightweight king Charles Du Bronx Oliveira. He takes on Arman Sarukian. This is a crazy, high-skilled matchup. You got two bona fide top 5 contenders in this lightweight class. Arman Tsarukyan's making his way up. He's 27. And of course, we all know Oliveira. He's 34. Will Arman Tsarukyan, will he pass this test? And if he does pass this test against Do Bronx, he will most likely, you got to put him in the title contention consideration. If he beats a guy like Charles Oliveira, if he stops Charles Oliveira, that is definitely a title shot in my eyes. I know that this lightweight division is packed with talent, packed with contenders, but this guy's 27. He's 21-3. He put up a really good fight in his debut against the current champion, Makhachev. So that rematch is always down the road. If Oliveira wins, same thing for him. He's definitely back in that title contention where it's his next fight or fight after where he would get a crack at the belt. Very excited to see this. Charles Oliveira has a crazy ground game, but he's got this crazy power in his hands as well. That's why he's just such a fun fighter to watch. You never know how Charles Oliveira is going to finish a fight. He can get knocked down 3 times and still come out as the winner. Now, moving on to a lightweight bout. This is for the BMF title. This is not obviously a real title, but it's the baddest mother effer title. And obviously this title was originally made for Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz. It has now been passed on to Justin Gaethje after he won it against Dustin Poirier this past summer. So that title's on the line. I'm more excited about the two men fighting. The title's kind of just it's kind of a gimmick, I would say. But obviously the matchup is not a gimmick at all. We got Justin Gaethje, the former interim UFC lightweight champion. He takes on the former UFC featherweight champion, Max Holloway. This time, Max Holloway gets a chance to go through training camp and bulk up to 155 naturally. I believe when he fought Dustin Poirier, he took that fight on short notice. If I'm wrong about that, please correct me, but I think that was what happened in Max Holloway's last lightweight bout. So this fight is going to be blood and guts. Max Holloway has an iron chin. Is Gaethje going to break his chin? Is Gaethje going to knock him down? Max Holloway has never been knocked down in any of his UFC fights, and he's really never been rocked crazy. So this is going to be a back and forth blood warfare, carnage. This is going to be crazy. I expect someone to get stopped in this fight. These guys are going to go out there and swing until they can't anymore. Now we get to the co-main event. We got a women's strawweight title bout. We got Weili Zhang taking on Yan Xiaonan. This is a enormous fight for China. These are two Chinese women who are putting on for their country, and I'm just very excited to see Weili Zhang perform. Yan Xiaonan is also very skilled in her own right. She's got good hands. She knocked out Jessica Andrade, which is not easy to do, but Weili Zhang has been insanely dominant. The only person that she's really lost to in the UFC is Rose Namajunas twice. So it's been an impressive run for Weili Zhang. Her last fight was against Amanda Lemos. That was in Boston. I was there live to see her dominate that fight. She is just one hell of a strawweight champion. And now we move on to the main event of UFC 300. This event culminates right here. We got a light heavyweight title bout. We got Alex Pereira, the former UFC middleweight champion, the current light heavyweight champion. He's taking on the former light heavyweight champion, Jamal Hill. This is a very, very fun main event for this card. This, again, I don't think this is going to the judges. Someone's going to get put to sleep. Jamal Hill has said on his social media that he's not going to wrestle Pereira. He's going to stand with him. Let's see if this fight goes past one round. I love this fight. These guys are badasses, and this is going to be a great main event. They're going to have the fans leave the arena very, very happy. I'm expecting a vicious finish to the night. PFL 2 is the second card of the PFL regular season. This takes place on Friday of this week, so it is the appetizer to UFC 300. At least that's how I look at it. There are some really good fights on this card. I'm going to start from the main event down. Main event is a light heavyweight bout. We got returning champion Impa Kasanganay. He takes on Alex Paluzzi. We got a light heavyweight bout. We got Robert Wilkins taking on Tom Breeze. Tom Breeze was in the UFC prior to this fight, I believe. He's 18-4. We move down the list. We have a lightweight bout. We got Clay Collard taking on Patricky Pitbull. This is going to be a banger of a fight. We move down to the lightweight bout. We have Mads Burnell. He takes on DeFort. And we keep moving down. We got a light heavyweight bout. We get Sadabi Sai taking on Josh Silivera, I believe that's how you say his name. And so this card is definitely a good one. There's a lot of talent on this card. Obviously, a lot of familiar faces from the Bellator roster, but I am really looking forward to that Collard and Pitbull matchup. So that's the fight that I would sit down and watch if that's the only fight I'm going to watch on this card. And that is going to do it for this episode of the KO Podcast. To stay up to date with the podcast, I have a link tree in all of my social media bios. This is going to be a crazy, huge week for MMA. I'm going to be very active on X, posting all of the reporters that are on the ground at UFC 300. There are going to be a lot of reports. Every single fighter on the roster is going to be at the press conference and be available for media. There's going to be a lot of information rolling in. So keep locked on the X account for the KO Podcast, because that's where all the information is going to be. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen. Stay safe, stay blessed, enjoy UFC 300. Bye-bye.